All right, so like I did, I want to say a little bit over a year ago, I think it was like at the very end of 2023, I made a list of fragrances that I had hopes that, some of the more affordable Middle Eastern inspired houses would actually make, actual inspirations of. And so what I have here today is going to be my top 15 list of fragrances that I'm hoping for specifically from the French Avenue line from Fragrance World. So just to kind of get the list started off, I'm going to start off with the first fragrance, which I hope that they make, and they've already actually made a sort of version of this. It's under just the regular Fragrance World line, but what I hope that French Avenue does is I hope that they make a version of Hibiscus Mahajad. Hopefully it could be in like this sort of bottle style that has, some of the other Maison Crivelli, scents, like this one being the Oud Maracuja. You've got the Coco Morado that comes in this bottle style, which is the Oud Cadenza scent profile. So I would really love to see French Avenue do the Hibiscus Mahajad scent profile in one of these bottles under the French Avenue line. It would definitely be, higher quality smelling than what Hibiscus Magic smells like from Fragrance World. I feel like that one was an okay interpretation of Hibiscus Mahajad, but it didn't smell as high quality and as close as what I think that they probably could have gotten. So definitely I am hoping for a Hibiscus Mahajad interpretation from French Avenue this year. So next on the list, this is a fragrance that I'm pretty sure I had on the previous list all the way back at the end of 2023, and that would be a Aventus Cologne interpretation. I would really hope that, French Avenue could put out a really, really solid interpretation of, Aventus Cologne. I think that would be a really, really nice fragrance, really popular fragrance. It may be something that may be in the plans already and, just hasn't been released or announced yet. But I really feel like, French Avenue probably could do a very, very close, affordable interpretation of Aventus Cologne. Obviously you've got the Alexandria version, and then you've got other versions from houses like Alexandria, like Montaigne and, Yamen Leo, stuff like that. But this is specifically, again, from French Avenue that I'm hoping for, these inspirations from. So again, the second fragrance on the list that I'm hoping for from French Avenue is going to be Aventus Cologne. All right, so the third one on the list, this is going to be Bleu Talisman. Now, obviously, Fragrance World, they have another version of Bleu Talisman under their Absolu Aventus line. That one is going to be Taj 2. Taj 2, it's a okay interpretation of Bleu Talisman. I would say for sure Lattafa's version, Art of Universe, is miles better than Taj 2. But I would definitely assume that French Avenue should be able to really drill down on that Bleu Talisman scent profile and really be able to create the best version of it. So I would definitely be hopeful of a French Avenue version of Bleu Talisman. I know that particular version of the fragrance more than likely would be, the hype on that one would be real. So again, that one is going to be Bleu Talisman. And then the next one on the list, I would hope that this one would be a part of the sort of Royal Blend series. So in this particular bottle style. And I'm hoping for an interpretation of By Kilian's Blue Moon Ginger Dash within this sort of line. So, maybe like a Royal Blend Citrus or something like that, with the same style bottle, where it's clear, but you would have maybe like light blue juice or kind of like dark blue juice or something like that inside of here. Maybe even like a gradient on the bottle, from like light blue to dark blue, something like that. I would really be hopeful for that because, to be honest, all of the fragrance so far that I've smelled within this Royal Blend line, and I mean, so far I do have all of the ones that have been released here in the United States. So I do have this one, Nero, as well as Vintage. And as far as the, by Killian interpretation, so this one and Vintage, they do definitely smell like really, really close to the original Killian. So this to me is like the best, angel share interpretation out there. And then the Royal Blend Vintage, which is the old fashioned by Killian interpretation, that also smells, I would say, just as close for the most part, to the original. So I would really, really be hopeful that, French Avenue could put out a Blue Moon Ginger Dash interpretation, again, within the same bottle style, the same line, Royal Blend. And I think that it would be like a really, really good interpretation of that fragrance. Obviously, Paris Corner has their interpretation of the fragrance, but it's definitely more of a twist, not necessarily like a exact, one-to-one, or I would even say not even really like a 95% close or anything like that. Like, it's an okay interpretation, but I think French Avenue could definitely do a little bit better. So again, that one is Blue Moon Ginger Dash. All right, so another one that I believe was also on the previous list would be Another 13. So Another 13 from Le Labo. That is one of my more, I would say it is one of my favorite sort of scent profiles. It's just a really easy to wear, kind of fresh floral type of scent. Has, a decent amount of sweetness from pear, especially in the initial opening of that fragrance. And I mean, at least on me anyway, Another 13 does last a pretty long time. So I would really, really be, grateful if French Avenue could put out their interpretation of that fragrance. And hopefully it would be at least, I would say, 92 to 95% closer so to, the original Another 13. Now, there's definitely plenty of houses that have their interpretations of Another 13. But, again, I think with French Avenue, their fragrances are going to be a lot more, sort of affordable than what a lot of those other houses like Alexandria or Yamanleo or Montaigne are going to be, per ml, especially once the fragrance has kind of been out for a little while. So initially, normally when these French Avenue fragrances come out, they're typically around that kind of $50 to $60 mark. But normally after several months of them being out, sometimes even within maybe a couple of months, they tend to kind of go down to closer around that $30 to $40 mark. So, and normally they're for 100 ml bottles. So I really think, if they could put out a very, very close but affordable version of Another 13, that would be really dope. So again, that one was Another 13. All right, so the next one would be Gucci Pour Homme 2. So the best interpretation that I've smelled so far anyway, and I guess really you could say the only interpretation that I've smelled so far has been Alexandria's version, the Pour Homme 2. And I mean, at least for me anyway, that fragrance is like identical to the original fragrance. So, obviously that version does exist and it is pretty readily available. But I mean, again, for 100 ml of that fragrance, it is on the higher side. So I would really, really be hopeful that French Avenue could put out, I would say an interpretation that rivals the Alexandria version in terms of how close it is to the original. And, even in terms of like the performance, but just for like a slightly cheaper price. So maybe something like around, the 40 to 40, I would say $40 to $50 mark or so for a 100 ml bottle. That would be perfect. And, again, something that's at least about, I would say it would have to be as close to the Alexandria version, to be worth it, to be honest. So basically like a 1-to-1 for the most part. I would really, really be grateful if they could do that. So again, that one is Gucci Pour Homme 2. All right, so the next one would be Initio's Absolute Aphrodisiac, and hopefully they would, put it in this sort of bottle style, like what we have here with the Paragon interpretation. So I would really, really hope that they could do that. I really do like Initio's Absolute Aphrodisiac, but not enough for me to go out and, spend even like a discounted price of like around, I believe, maybe about $180 to $200. I don't necessarily see myself spending that much on that particular scent. So it would be really nice if we could get like a really solid interpretation from French Avenue within this line of fragrances for Absolute Aphrodisiac. To me, Absolute Aphrodisiac is not like a super complicated smelling scent, at least, not to me anyway. So, I kind of feel like it would be a scent profile that wouldn't necessarily be like super difficult to, kind of recreate, especially considering, how good they've done recreating, the other sort of Initio scents within this particular bottle style. So, again, I'm pretty hopeful that they can do it. And I would really, really be appreciative if French Avenue could put out their version of Absolute Aphrodisiac. All right, so the next one would actually be my favorite, sort of Dior Sauvage line fragrance, and it would be French Avenue's take on Savauge Parfum. So Savauge Parfum, for me anyway, is like my favorite, version of Savauge. It used to be the original EDT just because of, how loud that fragrance is. And then, as I started to try some of the other versions of Savauge, it seems like I kind of started liking all of them right up until we got to like the Savauge Elixir. So Savauge Elixir is okay for me, but it's not necessarily like the Savauge that I like the most. I definitely like the extreme smoothness that you get with Savauge Parfum. Obviously, the Parfum, it doesn't project nearly as much as what the EDT or the EDP do. But just the overall smoothness and just the way that Savauge Parfum smells, for me anyway, that one is definitely the most enjoyable for me. I was going to say the most refined. I think most people would probably say that Savauge Elixir is the most refined one. But at least for me anyway, I really, really enjoy the way that Savauge Parfum smells the most. So hopefully that is one that we can get from French Avenue this year. So the next one on the list, I believe that this is actually a discontinued fragrance from Creed. I haven't really been able to find anywhere that's selling this fragrance anymore. And it's a shame because I saw this fragrance maybe a couple of years ago on different sites for like around $100 or so, and just never pulled the trigger on it, and I really regret it now. But this would be Creed's Asian Green Tea. So it's definitely not the most popular Creed fragrance at all. But it is a fragrance from Creed that I've really, really enjoyed. Now, it definitely, it lacks in terms of the longevity. So I would definitely hope that if, French Avenue could put out an interpretation of this scent, that they could definitely improve the longevity. Because the longevity on the Creed absolutely sucks, but it does smell really amazing. Obviously, with French Avenue, they're probably not going to be able to get the blend quality exactly the same as the Creed. That's typically something that most of these interpretation houses don't necessarily get, 100% when it comes to Creed fragrances. But, for me, as long as it's at least about 90 to 95% close to the original Asian Green Tea, I would be more than happy. Asian Green Tea is, like I said, it's not the most popular scent. It's a very, in my opinion, it's unisex. Maybe some people could consider it kind of feminine leaning, but it's a very unisex style scent to me. Just, I would say It does have a very sort of floral, but kind of tea type of feel to it. And I really, really enjoy the way that fragrance smells. Like I said, the performance on it is just not that great. So hopefully that is something that, either this year or eventually we can get from French Avenue. The next one would be Mandarino Di Amalfi from Tom Ford. So Mandarino Di Amalfi, that's one of my favorite Tom Ford fragrances. Definitely Tom Ford fragrances can either be, kind of hit or miss. But I feel like Tom Ford fragrances, they do get a lot of hate that they don't necessarily deserve. I do think that most of the scents that I've smelled from Tom Ford are actually pretty nice smelling scents. A lot of them are just very, very sort of niche smelling and unique. I think the main thing though that kind of, gets, I think the main thing that causes a lot of the hate towards Tom Ford fragrances is just how much they cost. Normally the 50 ml bottles normally cost like over $300. So, I mean, for most people, that's just going to be a little bit too much to spend on a fragrance, especially that's just a 50 ml. At least with like Louis Vuitton, you're spending over $300, but you're still getting a 100 ml bottle. Same thing with like the Dior private line fragrances. You're still getting, full size bottles for, over $300. Whereas with the Tom Ford, like I said, you're only getting about 50 ml. But that is one of my favorite sort of fresh scents, from Tom Ford. I haven't smelled all of them. I've heard really good stuff about, I believe it's called Azure Lime. I still need to check that one out. But, as far as what I've smelled so far, Mandarino Di Amalfi is definitely my favorite kind of, fresh, citrusy, summer and springtime style scent that I've smelled from Tom Ford. So definitely looking for a really solid interpretation of that scent from French Avenue. All right. So again, that one was Mandarino Di Amalfi. Next one on the list, I'm hoping that French Avenue can do an interpretation of this scent from Roja. And this would be Creation E from Roja. All right. So I would be really, really grateful if they could, do an interpretation that would be like in this bottle style, like what you have here with the Vin Asylum. And, that would have the same sort of quality that the original batches of the Vin Asylum had. So, obviously I've done a comparison video on like the, this particular batch, and then the batch that came out, I want to say like around like the spring of last year or so, which seemed to be, kind of reformulated and, wasn't exactly the same as what this version was. To me, it would be really, really dope if they could, do a really solid, interpretation of Creation E. That's another scent that I do like a lot, but I don't necessarily see myself getting like a full bottle of that fragrance, of the original one anyway. If I were to get a full bottle of any Roja right now, it would be Elysium, Parfum pour Homme. That would definitely be one that I would get. And if I were to get that fragrance, it would definitely be from, like a discounter like Aura fragrance where you can get that bottle for like around $250. So, that would definitely be my choice. But yeah, man, I would really be hopeful if we could get that really nice sort of, fizzy Coca-Cola sort of smell in a bottle like this from French Avenue. All right. So again, Creation E. Next one on the list, this one is a Kayali fragrance, and I was actually like really surprised at how much I actually liked this fragrance. Didn't really know anything about the fragrance before, I actually smelled it. I got a interpretation of it from Paris Corner, and the Paris Corner one is okay, but it was definitely missing, the oud that was in this particular fragrance. And this is Vanilla Royale Sugared Patchouli 64. So that fragrance for me was really, really nice. It definitely is a sweet kind of vanilla type of scent, but it has, a really nice sort of you know, spiciness to it, has some booziness from some rum, and it has a really nice backbone of oud in it. And this is it's definitely, you know, a Middle Eastern type of oud smell, in my opinion. I really enjoyed the way that the oud was mixed in with the vanilla, you know, the rum, the patchouli in that fragrance. It really came across really nice. So hopefully that is something that, you know, Fragrance World or French Avenue, I'm sorry, can, you know, recreate. I would say hopefully it would be in the same kind of bottle style as, you know, like what Luscious comes in, which is similar to this. Hopefully that is something that we could get, because I really do think that that is a really slept on, you know, scent from Kayali. So again, Vanilla Royale Sugared Patchouli number 64. All right, so the next one on the list, I've smelled a lot of interpretations of this fragrance so far. I still have, I believe, 2 of them. This would be Creed's Absolu Aventus. So obviously I have the Armaf version, I have the Joe Milano version, and I really think that, you know, French Avenue could put out a very solid interpretation of that scent as well. You know, now whether or not it would be better than the Armaf or the Joe Milano, you know, I'm not sure, but, you know, I think it would definitely be something that would have to be closer than what the Armaf is. And it would also have to be slightly closer than what the Joe Milano is. The Joe Milano is definitely the closer of the two, in my opinion, but definitely in the opening, there is, I would say, some missing sort of sweetness and spiciness, you know, from the Joe Milano that you're not getting, that you are getting in the original Creed. Now, again, obviously with it being a Creed fragrance, the blend quality is not going to be like, you know, 1-to-1 or exactly the same. But I would love to see French Avenue's take on that scent profile, because that is one of my favorite, you know, my favorite sort of scent profiles in terms of the Aventus scent. You know, like I mentioned before, Aventus Cologne, I would say, is still going to be my favorite, and then it would be Absolu Aventus, and then Aventus at the bottom. All right, so again, Absolu Aventus is one that I'm hoping for this year from French Avenue. Next one on the list would be from Ex Nihilo as well, and this one would be the Hedonist from Ex Nihilo. So that's a fragrance that I did actually get when I got my sample of Blue Talisman, because I was pretty curious about how that fragrance would smell. Just looking at the notes, you know, the notes of that fragrance did definitely appeal to me. You know, it had citruses, it had ginger, it seemed to be kind of like a, you know, really sort of bright, citrusy, spicy kind of, you know, Ambroxan type of scent. And that is kind of what I got. I think it definitely came across as a lot more citrusier than what I thought it would. But it is a scent that I definitely do enjoy a lot. Obviously, the original scent is going to be like around, I believe, $300. I think the Ex Nihilo scents are like around $290-ish or something like that. So not necessarily looking to get like a full bottle of the fragrance, you know, or of the original one, but I would really be hopeful if French Avenue could put out their interpretation that would be at least like 90 to 95% close to the, you know, original scent. So again, that one is the Hedonist. And then the last one on the list is Bleu Turquoise from Armani Privé. So I believe Bleu Turquoise is like a discontinued fragrance from Armani Privé. Obviously, you do have the version from Emperor Perfumes, or now I believe it's called Milestone, which is the Privé Turquoise. That is a very solid interpretation of the scent, but I think that French Avenue could make a slightly higher quality, little bit closer interpretation of the scent profile. You know, I would really be hopeful that they could do that, because again, I really do love Bleu Turquoise a lot. You know, obviously when I first smelled that fragrance, that was definitely a fragrance that was completely, you know, out of my sort of reach in terms of price goes. Doing a little bit better on finances now, but even still now, I don't necessarily know if I would want to spend the sort of Armani Privé prices on that particular fragrance. So, you know, that would definitely be a hard one for me to kind of think about buying, because Bleu Turquoise, even though I love that scent profile a lot, it's not necessarily one that I like reach for a whole lot. So it would be nice to have, you know, a cheaper 90 to 95% close interpretation of it that wouldn't cost me more than, you know, maybe $40 to $50 or so. All right. So last one on the list, that one would be Bleu Turquoise. So definitely, Matt, let me know what you all think about this list. Let me know if you all are also hoping for French Avenue versions of any or all of these scents. Definitely let me know in the comments. And also, if you're brand new to the channel, do me a favor, go ahead and subscribe. And again, that's Jamar from Vegas Scents. I'll see you on the next video.